Okay, we are back at our machine, ready to top stitch our bag. I have taken the platform off of my machine so I can just be working with the free arm. I also checked my bobbin and grabbed a new spool of thread for my top. It's always a good rule of thumb to check those things before you begin top stitching. First, you want to pull long threads from your needle so that we can tie those off later. And then I am going to start stitching at one of our sides right here. So I'm going to remove the clip. And I am going to get this underneath my needle. Making sure that the liner and the exterior remain even. And I'm just gonna start slow. And as you approach the front or the back of your bag, make sure that the zipper panel is pushed into the inside of the bag so that you don't sew over that. Make sure you stop every 5 to 10 stitches to pull the bag this way underneath your machine so that there's more slack to push it through that way. And just keep inching it along, folding the handle backwards so you can get through this part. I'm pulling more from underneath my machine so that I have enough to feed through the top of the machine. There are a lot of things to keep track of on this step. Always make sure that your liner and your exterior remain even as you go through your machine. As you take the clips off, they're going to want to shift a little bit. So always readjust them after you take the clips off. Okay, adjust the zipper placket. Sometimes with my right hand, I go through my machine and hold on to the bag behind my needle. I don't pull the material through my needle, but I am keeping it from turning this. I am keeping it from turning too far angled this way or this way. So I just keep everything straight with my hand back here. But be sure not to pull the material. Let the machine work the material through on its own. Gets a little bit easier once you're able to pull some more material to the front of your machine. And I'm making sure that the zipper is out of the way and we don't stitch over that. Pull off a clip, readjust my edges. And we've reached the second zipper placket, so I'm moving that out of the way. Now throughout this whole project, this whole bag, I've been using a 116 needle. Typically I would just use a 90-14 needle, but again, like I said, this material is a little bit more sturdy than I'm used to using. And the 100 needle has worked perfectly. I haven't skipped any stitches or had any problems getting through the material. But even if I was using a material that I typically would use, like a thinner, more pliable leather, faux leather, I would still probably size up to a 116 needle on the top stitching, because then I would be able to get through some of these seams that we're going through without worrying about potential skipped stitches. Okay, we are almost through. We just went through our last seam and we are about 2 inches away from being done. So once you approach your starting point, be careful to end your stitches with your needle down in the same stitch hole as when you started. And that will give a super seamless look to your top stitching. Like you won't be able to tell where you started or stopped. And with this last stitch, I'm just going to use my hand crank to get the needle right in the right spot. There we go. And here is the top stitching on our bag. So with these long tails, we are going to use a long needle. I use this upholstery needle, and I like to put it right through the last hole of your stitches where the threads are sticking out from. Feed it through that stitch hole and up between the layers. Sorry, my hand is in the way. Right through that hole and up through the layers. There we go. And I like to feed the needle through before I thread it, because then I don't accidentally lose my threads while I'm trying to do that. Okay, and we are going to pull pull those threads up through the top of the bag, through in between the layers, and we're going to do the same thing to the inside here, where we feed our needle through the stitch hole and up between the layers, making sure not to puncture the vinyl in any new places. And it should be super easy to thread the upholstery needle because the eye is enormous. All right, and we're going to separate those and just give them a couple knots. Really, really tight so it buries down in between those layers and you won't be able to see that. Again with the knots. All right, and now one more time we're going to feed this needle down through in between the layers. And then if you can, find the needle with your finger, just kind of reach into the liner and find the tip of the needle and try and guide it through the seam, the side seam. If you can see this right here. So the needle is coming out directly through the side seam, and that way you don't have to puncture a hole in your liner. And then I'm going to thread the needle with all 4 threads at one time. Okay, and then we're going to pull it through. So now we have 4 threads sticking out of the liner seam. I'm going to give a tug on that one and kind of pull up on the liner while you pull on the threads. And then cut the threads off really close to the liner so that once the liner relaxes, those threads get buried inside your bag. And there we go. And the last step, the very last step, is to just add our zipper end. Now it's time to finish off our zipper with a metal end cap like this one here. And using the Beacon 3-in-1 Advanced Glue, I just put a little drop on the inside of my zipper and just let it sit for a second while I fold the zipper tape. And you just want to fold it and try to be as even as you can with your fold. And get it to be about as wide as the zipper teeth. And then you should be able to slide the zipper end on. And you have to be very firm because you want the zipper to go inside the metal cap as far as it'll go. And then you want it to be really, really stuck in there because this is what people are going to be holding on to when they zip and unzip their zipper. So you don't want that to be too loose. And then it comes, the metal zipper cap comes with a tiny, tiny screw, and you just screw that in pretty tight. And then I like to give it a good yank because if it's going to come off, I want it to come off when I'm testing it and not when my customers are testing it. And here is our finished bag.